The Bengals have made major changes to their coaching staff. Hear from Zac Taylor, my thoughts, and did they get it right with Lou Anarumo, Frank Pollock, and more? We'll dive into it all right now on Enter the Jungle. Hi again, everyone, and welcome into Enter the Jungle. I'm James Rapine. He's Andrew Fox Miller. You can catch us every single Tuesday at 8 Eastern right here on the YouTube channel Cincinnati Bengals Talk. We're brought to you by Garage Beer. Grab a Garage Beer today. It'll help you get through the NFL playoffs. And the Bengals obviously came up just short of making the playoffs. They finished 9-8 on the year. Their fourth straight winning season. It's only the second time, Andrew, they've done that in team history. And yet the back-to-back 9-8 seasons, back-to-back years without the playoffs, and back-to-back disappointing finishes this year, wasting Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, Trey Hendrickson, which led to multiple firings. Zac Taylor on Monday fired defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo, fired defensive line coach Marion Hobby, fired linebackers coach James Bettcher, and fired offensive line coach Frank Pollock. We're going to talk about Pollock. We're going to talk about Anarumo in depth. But Andrew, in general, what was your first reaction when you heard all of these moves?
I didn't think it was all going to be all at once. I didn't think it was going to be one fell swoop, like four immediate. Like I've seen it around the league. Nothing should surprise me, but I think you get certain things in your head so much, like, oh, they could, they should, will they? And it just all happens, boom, just like that, Black Monday.
Yeah, it was a dark Monday at Paycor Stadium for sure. My main takeaway from this is Zac Taylor's shot. This is Zac Taylor's shot to say, hey, we need to press the reset button. We need new voices. We need to change some things to continue to push forward and be a Super Bowl contender. This is his one chance to do that. Now, he's had multiple chances throughout his tenure with the Bengals. Obviously, the first 2 years didn't go well. He gets them to Super Bowl 56. He gets them to back-to-back AFC championship games, 2 straight AFC North titles. And now the past 2 years have gone the opposite. They're trending in the wrong direction. And so Zac goes to his bosses, his words, not mine, and says, hey, I want to make this move with Lou Anarumo. I want to make this move with Frank Pollock. We need new voices. We need a change of direction. It was his decision. And so when I hear that, Andrew, I instantly think about Zac. And a lot of people have said, oh, well, Zac should be fired, whatever. There's no reason to necessarily debate that because he's not. But what I do think is that pressure to win, that seat, is hot entering 2025. He better win now because Lou Anarumo was under contract for next season. And he said, hey, we need to move on from Lou. We need to get someone else. So not only does he need to get these hires right, regardless of who it is, but they need to win. They need to get back to the playoffs. They need to push and be a real legitimate Super Bowl contender. I think that this is the most pressure Zac Taylor has felt and will feel since entering that 2021 season when he was 6-25-1 after 2 years, and it felt like he should have already been gone. This is the first time I think, again, where his seat is legitimately hot and will be hot entering 2025.
I'm going to agree with you, of course. But I do feel like people gloss over the fact, and I'm not defending Zac Taylor and when I say this, but two seasons that you could say that he would have been under the most pressure after. He didn't have Joe Burrow for a full season. So now you've had him for a full season. Let me put it this way. Could Zac then turn around in 2026 and go, hey, you know what? Our new defensive coordinator, it was just his first year. I think he's getting there. He's getting there. Does that just buy him more time in a weird kind of, you know what I mean? Like in a weird way?
That would be unacceptable.
I agree. I'm just speculating.
No, I get what you're saying. There is no time. If I'm Mike Brown, and I'm saying, okay, I'll sign off on these decisions, Zac. And obviously he did because those decisions were made. If I'm Katie Blackburn, if I'm Troy Blackburn, if I'm Duke Tobin, all of these. All right, Zac, we believe in you. We understand the disconnect. We see it. If we're going to do this, understand that you have to win. The expectation is winning because There's no doubt that Lou Anarumo is a good football coach, a good defensive coordinator. Frank Pollock is a good offensive line coach, and people will debate that, and that's fine. You can debate it in the mirror all you want, but you're wrong if you think he's a bad coach. That doesn't mean that it was the perfect fit or anything like that. But if you're Zach Taylor and you go to your bosses and you say, hey, this is my issue, and this is what we need to do to win, and then you don't win after having a healthy Joe Burrow, have an MVP-like season. He would be the MVP had you won a few more games. I have no doubt in my mind. You have Jamar Chase, Triple Crown winner. You have the NFL leader in sacks. And you're 9-8, and you were 4-8 at one point. You were 1-7 in one-score games at one point. Okay, fine. It's the defense's fault. We'll fix that, Zach. But you better win. And I asked Zach about that on Monday because I think when all of these things happen, it'd be like me going to YouTube and being like, hey man, you got to get Andrew out of there. You got to get Andrew out of there. We got to regroup. If I do that, well, guess what? Pressure's on me to deliver whatever it is that I need to deliver on the front end of things. Zach Taylor, pressure's on him to deliver. I asked him if he feels that pressure after going to Mike Brown and the Bengals ownership and saying he needed to make these coaching moves.
I mean, when I tell you, I feel an urgency to win every single day. I'm not lying to you. So pressure is not the word. You can't do this job if you're going to succumb to pressure. And I just make the decisions I feel like I need to make, not because of any pressure I feel. These are decisions I feel like I got to make because I'm the head coach of this football team and the expectations that we have. And so there's always a level of urgency to improve everything I'm doing and everything this team is doing. Pressure is not the word I would use.
Pressure is the word I'll use. There is pressure. There is pressure. I get it. He doesn't feel that because it's internal and he wants to say it. Bull. There's pressure. He knows it. This season was disappointing. Fine. Now you got to go win in 2025.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, I like how you paint a little picture about how it all the talks went down behind closed doors, and Zach was like really taking ownership and I'm going to take care of this and do this.
Yeah.
We're kind of filling in blanks here. I mean, for all we know, it could have been pressure put on him in that moment of, hey, what are you going to do about this, Zach? Well, I'm going to have to make some tough decisions. What are those tough decisions, Zach? Who knows? They could have forced his hand on this. We don't know. But I don't know. Something that Zach said there about being a head coach. I was going to even make the comment. I wish I had said it before this clip rolled. Now that I say it, doesn't hold the same weight. But him being a head coach, like people that complain about Zach Taylor, whatever various complaints they have, that how he's not a good head coach. This is what a GM would be doing a lot of times too. But this is what a head coach would do, making those tough decisions. And this is the first time that I can think of in a while where he's been pretty open about making those tough decisions, a little bit more vulnerable in how he explained it in this particular news conference. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, for sure. We do know though.
Okay.
Just so you know.
Oh, well, Zach, you were busy trying to drive through the snow when,
Zach wasn't lying. Oh, dude, we have footage of me driving through the snow.
Oh, yeah. We'll get to that. I like that you, by the way, drove through snow. We'll get to it on Monday to get a Zoom call video for us for this week's episode. Thank you so much for your sacrifice.
Or it was to get a bunch of locker room stuff that, as of now, you have not put up.
You're not going to see on Enter the Jungle.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's true. Look at you. That's why you got to subscribe to Cincinnati Bengals Talk on YouTube. Andrew is clearly in favor of keeping Zach Taylor for the rest of time, regardless of wins and losses. But up next, Lou Anarumo out. Was it the right call by Zach? Was it the right call by the organization? We will discuss that on Enter the Jungle. Welcome back to Enter the Jungle. I'm James Erpine. He's Andrew Fox Miller, and maybe I should call you Andrew Fox Taylor. Just kidding. Oh. All right. Wow. That's enough. Lou Anarumo out. No longer the Bengals defensive coordinator. 6 seasons. Zach Taylor made the decision to fire him. Zach said multiple times it was his decision, despite what Andrew wants to speculate behind closed doors. That being said, right decision, wrong decision. I think I have a different perspective and insight than you. Neither of us are going to be wrong here because I think we both agree that Lou Anarumo is a good football coach. We saw him do a bunch of good stuff for this organization. So what are your thoughts on the Bengals letting go of Lou?
this is one of those things where if they didn't fire him, I would have been furious. Like, he should have been fired. Why is he still walking in this building? You know, like I wouldn't have been that. I think I could understand either scenario. The things that I don't know behind closed doors, once again, are I feel like where maybe those gaps that could have been filled in whatever ultimate decision they would have made on it. I think it just came down to that. But here's what I do know. Joe Burrow very well could have been MVP had the season gone differently. His numbers certainly support it. Jamar Chase wins Triple Crown. T. Higgins played as well as he's ever played and was on the field for most of the season. So there's that. And Chase Brown, of course, you know, he made a name for himself in his second year. So all of that. Anarumo's defense made all of that not enough to win games more than it should have been. For, like, Commanders, Ravens, both times with Ravens, the first game against the Steelers, the Chargers. And it's not like this was a fluke. It's not like this was the first year the defense struggled. So, I mean, you know, we could say the writing was on the wall. I think ultimately I'm more surprised that someone with relative longevity and, you know, the sort of closeness, we'll say, he has with Zach Taylor, I thought that might work in his favor. I wouldn't have been shocked if he didn't lose his job.
Yeah, I think after that Steelers game, the first one, I think Lou was facing a real uphill climb. And that final month of the season, the defense battled back. They forced 13 turnovers in that 5-game winning streak. You win back-to-back road games in Tennessee after beating Dallas on Monday Night Football. You go to Pittsburgh and you win in the season finale. And the defense is a big reason why. And I was like, man, I wonder if Mike Brown, and he's so many times in his career when he's been the head man, has bought the late season rally, whether it's Marvin Lewis, whether it's the late 90s, early 2000s. Like, we've seen this with a bunch of different coaches. You can read about it by going to CincinnatiBengalsBook.com and getting End of the Jungle, wherever books are sold. Shameless plug. The point is, though, I thought that there was a chance that would happen. But the reason Lou was fired today isn't because he isn't a good defensive coordinator, because he is. 6 years, they had to reset, they had to retool, and they go get Miles Murphy in the first round, a year after taking Dax Hill in the first round. What did they do in round 2 in both of those years? Take cornerbacks, Cam Taylor-Britt, DJ Turner. They bring in Jordan Battle. They spend on Nick Scott. They spend on Geno Stone. And yes, they didn't bring back Jesse. I get it. They didn't bring back Jesse Bates. And that is a knock on the front office. They got that one wrong.
Or Reader, sure.
And they didn't bring back DJ Reader. There's no doubt. But they did draft Chris Jenkins. They did draft McKinley Jackson. They did spend a third-round pick on Joseph Osai. And I think the front office looks at it and says, all right, well, can you get a little bit more out of Miles Murphy? 0 sacks this season. Sam Hubbard playing ahead of him for most of the year and like substantially ahead of him, significantly more snaps. No, I need Von Bell. They bring back Von Bell and it keeps Jordan Battle on the bench and Von isn't really making plays. And it's like, well, why can't you get Jordan in sooner? And it was all this complicated. They got to run he's got to run his stuff. Well, what did you hear over the final month? It was like, yeah, it's just simpler and just kind of simplifying things. And it's working because these young guys are playing faster. Joseph Osai was playing faster. You know, he had 5 sacks in the final, 6 games or something like that. And it was because he was playing faster. He didn't have to think. He could just go out there and play. And I think that's what the front office, that's what Zach, that's what everyone was looking at. It's like, all right, well, can you get something out of a first rounder in Miles Murphy? Can you get something out of Dax Hill? I mean, it was year 3 and they finally figured out Dax Hill should play corner. Like, right. What? I sat here in this chair raving about Dax Hill 3 years ago because he's an awesome prospect, has a ton of talent. He was a high prospect on their draft board in 2022, and the front office loved him, and Lou couldn't even get him on the field as a rookie. So I don't think it's just struggling in 2024. I think it's the lack of development with some of these young guys. A lot of draft capital was spent. They might not have spent huge dollars at safety by keeping Jesse Bates, but they signed 2 free agents. But they also drafted Jordan Battle, but they also had a really expensive defensive front this year. And yeah, they should have kept DJ Reader. But okay, they didn't. They gave you Chris Jenkins, McKinley Jackson, and they went out and they got Sheldon Rankins. Well, Rankins was a dud, the worst dud, probably the worst free agent signing of the Zach Taylor era. And
that That would be a segment later.
And no doubt. But there's levels to it. So did Lou do a lot right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think he had a lot working against him. And at some point you have to switch something up. And I think that Zach Taylor, and likely most of the organization, if not all of the organization, didn't think he was maximizing what they had on defense. Even though it's unproven, I think they believe they have more talent than they showed for most of the season.
Well, and everything you just mentioned, there were instances of the whole laundry list. The 2024 season, it's like he doubled down on that in a way, despite struggling immensely for well over the first half of the season. I mean, the fact that Von Bell, like he's relying on Von Bell when he's got youth behind him he could rotate, Battle in more earlier in the season. You mentioned Battle, so I thought of that. And Miles Murphy, you mentioned, same thing. You're just leaning on Hubbard over and over, who's struggling.
He's hurt. He's hurt.
He wasn't coaching like someone that was coaching for their job. I felt like they were taking some tendencies and just really, they were all of a sudden exaggerated. It just felt that way in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's all of them. Dax Hill can't get on the field as a Swiss Army knife as a rookie. Jordan Battle can't get on the field in year 2 over Von Bell at times. Miles Murphy over a hurt Hubbard.
Why are we drafting top 100 picks left and right for defense when we aren't getting them out in the field and actually?
Now you're talking draft receivers all day long, baby. Just take all the weapons. That's how I live by. It's a weapons league, Andrew Foxmiller. And with that, let's get to the trenches. The Bengals also fired Frank Pollock. Our thoughts on that coming up next. The Bengals fired offensive line coach Frank Pollock. Was it the right decision? Hi again, everyone, and welcome back to Enter the Jungle. He's Andrew Foxmiller. I'm James Rapine, and this was the least shocking one to me, Andrew. I think that from a fit standpoint, you're talking about this old school, former NFL lineman of the 90s that's tough, that's got some bleep to his neck, his words, not mine.
Glass eaters.
Glass eaters, right? And his run game and his style of coaching didn't necessarily fit with what the Bengals were trying to do offensively, scheme-wise. And so I think from you look at all those offensive coaches on the staff, usually a lot of them are young, innovative. I'm thinking Dan Pitcher, Brad Cragthorpe last year, and for the first 5 years of Zach Taylor's tenure, Brian Callahan. And Frank Pollock is a good offensive line coach. I think he's going to get another job quickly. But it didn't fit. And so with his contract being up, this one felt inevitable.
Yeah, Ian, you mentioned it earlier. The same thing with Anarumo. They're going to get jobs. It's a fit issue. Look at Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon's a good running back. Just wasn't a fit for what they were doing. They held on him arguably a little longer than maybe they needed to because it just didn't align with what they were trying to do. And everything you just said there is what I would have said. I would have said the same thing with Frank Pollock. The only thing I'm not quite clear on with Pollock, and I feel like he gets, I want to say it's not justified. I just don't have the evidence to back it up. I suppose is the selection from whether it's draft, whether it's free agency, and the ultimate, you could put development on him ultimately, but like, how involved was he in that? People blame him for decisions in that area. I know like Jackson Carman wasn't one of them, but since then, that's a little gray area for me. So I'm going to also default to fit. This is an old school. Like he's going to be great on certain offenses, just not Zach Taylor's.
Yeah, I think it's about fit attitude wise. It's about fit style wise. Obviously scheme, and to me, they didn't invest. It's kind of the opposite of Lou. They invested a lot of dollars in proven guys, and yet they weren't high-end guys outside of Orlando Brown Jr. Like Alex Kappa was good and then kind of took a step back, and I think that's more health-wise than anything. But Cordell Volson, before Amarius Mims, Cordell Volson was the highest pick that Pollock had to work with, not named Jackson Carman, and Jackson Carman was never really had a shot. There was never a moment. I feel like I studied the draft as close. There was no way they should have picked him 46th overall. They did. That's on the organization. That's not on Pollock. So there's multiple people to blame. But again, it goes back to what I said at the beginning of the show. The pressure is on Zach Taylor now. Find the right guy. Because I think Lou Anarumo is a good coach. I think Frank Pollock is a good coach. Fine. You need the right fit. You need the right style. You need a new voice. You need a guy that's going to maximize your talent on your roster, fine, go find it. And that's where the pressure is. We'll see if they can get it right at DC, at offensive line coach. Up next, a wild, wild Black Monday filled with snow. Welcome back to End of the Jungle. He's Andrew Fox Miller. I'm James Rapine. And full disclosure, on Monday, when all of the craziness went down at Paycor Stadium, I went back and forth, Andrew. Should I go? Should I not go? I told you I wasn't going to go. And then I was like, nope, I'm going. And I decided to brave the weather. And downtown was completely stopped. It reminded me of like what the Walking Dead series would be like in the winter with snow. I mean, there really weren't. There was a couple people walkers, and that was about it. It was wild. It was eerie, but pretty cool because we made it in one piece and we were able to get down there and talk with multiple players. Yeah,
no, that was I'm convinced you just want to get out of the house, right? Like are you running from your family? Because like, why would you go through that? I saw footage of the highways and it's insane to me. What? So you get a Zach Taylor Zoom call? You get a word in with Mike Gesicki, who might not be on the team next year?
I talked with Orlando Brown Jr. For 8 minutes.
Sure.
And then I talked to him again for another 7 minutes off camera. And he said Andrew Fox Miller is the worst human he's ever met. He talked to DJ Ivey. I was able to chop it up with Charlie Jones and have some info on him that I can't share right now. Nothing bad, of course. Talked with Andre Yosevach. I mean, talked with plenty of guys. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, I don't have evidence of that. So it was a trip well spent. Good for you.
It was a trip well spent. Talked to Amarius Mims, by the way. That broken hand is going to heal on its own, just like Orlando Brown Jr.'s broken leg, going to heal on its own. No surgery needed for the Bengals' 2 studs at tackle. But that's going to do it for us. We're going to have a ton of time all offseason to talk Bengals. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, Cincinnati Bengals Talk. And until next time, for Andrew Fox Miller, I'm James Rapine. Thank you so much for watching.